All right, everybody. Hello, welcome into Talkin Twolves. I'm Garett. I'm joined by my buddy Kevin Stanky. Kevin, how are you, dude?
Super duper.
I hope you're ready to talk some T-Wolves, but more specifically, talk some trades that didn't happen for the Timberwolves. The trade deadline passed last Thursday, and they did not make a move. Were you surprised by that?
I was surprised. I was surprised they didn't make any moves, even if it was just a move to get worse. Like, I know that they're in the tax, and yeah, it's not my money, but I was surprised that they didn't at least move somebody to get under the tax, and not so much for this season, but you don't want to be caught being a repeater in the NBA. So, surprised they didn't make some move just to clear some salary. Surprised that we didn't get in on somebody like Terrence Ross from Orlando Magic. But all in all, seeing how things shook out, I feel like, we're better off not pursuing Gordon long term. Aaron Gordon traded from the Magic to the Nuggets, as well as John Collins, who might be an exciting player. But I could kind of tell the Hawks are in a situation where they seem to be playing games with him, and I don't know. I'm glad we didn't make any rash decisions. After all, last season, 2020, we basically turned over our entire roster and haven't really even seen the best of it yet. So,
right, we haven't even seen the guts of that roster and the turnover from last year play together and show us the reasoning why Gershon made those trades last year. So, yeah, I'm not surprised they didn't make any trades. I was surprised they didn't move a player like Rubio or Culver, but Culver had no trade collateral or how do you say it? He had no trade worth because he hasn't played. So I thought for sure you could trade some kind of a veteran and just get some kind of maybe a second round pick or a player that comes off the books for better cap relief next year. But I wasn't surprised they didn't make a move. I was happy they didn't make a move by trading a player like McDaniels or Noel, because those two guys have played fantastic since the All-Star break, and to trade them would have been a giant step back, in my opinion. They have proven they're talented, and I really like what I've seen from them, and I don't think trading them for an Aaron Gordon would have been not a great decision. The John Collins idea could have been a good idea. He's only 25, right? I mean, he fits the timeline and he's proven, but the way Jaden McDaniels has been playing and the talent that he's shown, I'm excited that we were able to draft him, and I'm excited for what the future holds for him. And the way Noel has been playing, I don't know if you saw him light it up in that Phoenix win. Man, that dude can shoot. When he gets hot, he gets hot.
yeah, he's been impressive. But I think Wancho probably had the most notable quote leading up to the trade deadline, saying that they're the worst team, and you got to expect they'd want to do something. Even the players are saying that. So, as much as we'd like to get hyped about the prospects, and I would love to see McDaniels really turn it up. And so far, he's becoming one of the steals of the draft, a late first rounder. And it's hard to expect guys like that. Of course, you look at John Collins; he was kind of around the same area. I believe he came out in the Kogi draft.
I think he came out in the Kogi draft. Is correct.
After him. And yeah, it's in my opinion, yeah, don't push those chips in right now, because you want to see how they develop a little bit. You don't want to be too gun shy because you got a lot of those chips right now, and right now all they are is potential. And yeah, there's just too many tricks for them to really pull something out. You look at what Gordon pulled in. It was really a young first round mid draft pick in RJ Hampton, and I believe two other first rounders, probably with some protections involved with those as well. And Gary Harris is a decent player, but he is mostly just there to complete the deal. And could we have put together a similar package like that? Who would it have been? It would probably have been Rubio. It probably would have been, maybe some kind of Wancho. Not really, probably be a Culver for them to be able to be satisfied with it. And then what? You're going to trade 2 first-round picks for the Timberwolves when they are missing their first-round pick next year potentially, or the year after that if they don't convey it. So what are you going to do if you're the Timberwolves? You got to hold on to those picks at this point and figure out a way to recalibrate, or at least see what your team is before the summer hits, and then start to see how your pieces interact with each other. Beasley, he had his first game back on Saturday, and the Rockets just thrubbed them. I'm going to say thrub. They gave him a thrubbing.
A thrubbing. Does that involve the thumbs?
It's like a throbbing kind of rubbing.
A throbbing.
So yeah,
that game was hard to watch, dude. To get back to the Aaron Gordon trade, and just to kind of touch on what you said, I do have the details of the trade, and yeah, giving up Gary Harris and RJ Hampton, they did give a future first round pick, not a second round pick. So like the trade made sense for the Magic. Just one
first round pick for the Nuggets. And that's not going to be a good pick. They're going to be in, they're going to be the back half of the draft.
And then the Nuggets got Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark. I mean, is Aaron Gordon a free agent after this year, or do they have him under contract for next year?
He's a year and a half, yeah. So they get to see him for a year and a half, and he's going to be a perfect fit with Jokic because he's a cutter.
Oh yeah.
He's a pretty good shooter, not a great shooter, but he's going to be there to catch those passes when Jokic gets double teamed, and he's going to make those cuts. And if he's not converting them, he's passing them on to somebody who is. So it's a really good situation for him going into the contract year. So good for Mr. 50. He's wearing number 50 too. 50 as
50
well.
Because he has perfect 50 on the dunk contest more than any other person.
And yeah,
I saw that.
Honestly, I'm surprised. I know that he was robbed on the Derrick Jones one, but I'm a huge Zach LaVine fan. But he had the greatest dunk of all time when he dunked over the mascot.
Mascot on a hoverboard.
In outer space.
I thought that was amazing. I mean, yeah, Zach LaVine was able to do it from the alley-oop from the free throw line, but on a hoverboard, the mascot, not a small mascot, by the way. So that brings me to the next question. I was surprised that the Wolves didn't trade Ricky Rubio, right? I thought for sure the rumors were that the Clippers were really interested in Rubio, and they didn't pull the trigger. The Wolves, I imagine, probably held on to Rubio just to not piss off Anthony Edwards, right? He seems to really like Rubio's leadership. They've kind of bonded a little bit, and Rubio and him have the same energy on the court, right? They're both there because they love the game. They play hard. So since the Timberwolves held on to Rubio, let's take a look at what the Clippers did. And they traded for Rajon Rondo, right? And they traded to the Hawks. Listen to what they gave away, which is, I think it's pretty crazy. They sent the Hawks Lou Williams, who's a sixth man of the year how many times? They gave him a 2023 second round pick 2027 second round pick, which I didn't even know you could go that far out on a second round pick, and cash. Just for Rajon Rondo, man.
Well, I think Lou Williams and Rondo are probably close to the same boat. I think we know that we saw in the bubble last year that Lou Williams can't really perform in the playoffs and can get you in some headaches if he's at the strip club. And Rondo, he turns it up for the playoffs, and that's what the Clippers' expectations are. So I don't blame them for dumping a couple seconds for Rondo, essentially, because Lou Williams, he wasn't going to be playing at crunch time for the Clippers probably in the playoffs, even though he's got that pedigree, even though he's said for years that he's going to retire if he leaves the team. Probably Atlanta was the one team that could have convinced him to say. I believe it's his hometown, and of course where he attends when he's not in the bubble.
Yeah, I was surprised they went after Rajon Rondo. I don't know. I mean, he seems to fit the bill with what they needed in a veteran point guard, somebody who can facilitate and play good defense. I was surprised they who's their other point guard?
Patrick Beverly.
Patrick Beverly, yes. I'm surprised they held on to him. Now they kind of have both of the best of both worlds, right? Defense and offense, facilitation. So I guess that works out for the Clippers, and
I think they're both.
All they had to give up was Lou Williams.
I think you got kind of repetitive players, in my opinion, with Rondo and Beverly.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to see the floor together, and they're probably just each other's insurance. I think Rubio is right in the same pedigree as those guys. He's probably hasn't reached the peaks that either of them have, either in the playoffs or just individually, but he is still younger than both those guys too, I believe. So he's pretty comparable, I would say, to Patrick Beverly. And when the buzz around the team was around him being traded to the Clippers, that's, it seemed to be something that, it might be good on paper, but in practice, I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense. And if you're talking about just grabbing a couple of second rounders and Lou Williams, who, at least for the Hawks, he's in the playoff hunt. He's in a place he enjoys. For the Timberwolves, we probably would have found a third team to deal him to, I would hope, if that was going to be the case. Grab those 2 second rounders. I don't know. I don't see that one having to work out. The benefit of having Rubio on your team to, really in the week leading up to the trade deadline, you saw him working with Anthony Edwards. It's not just them talking about working, but you see him talking in the huddle with him. It's taken to the side. I think that's just as valuable.
I agree. I think it's just as valuable.
Cut from your team before he ever goes up.
No, it is. He knows it. I think Rubio knows how not just his play on the court is valuable to this team, but the fact of the bond he's formed with Anthony Edwards is quite valuable to the team. I think Chris Finch understands that, and most likely plays into the reasoning of why they didn't trade Rubio at the trade deadline. Before we end, Kevin, let's just talk about a couple of the big trades that happened. The Heat, as you know, traded for Victor Oladipo. They traded away who we saw kick the Wolves' butt, Kelly Olynyk, who seemed to just jump right into the Rockets lineup. Avery Bradley, I don't know if he played the other night, and they just swapped picks in the 2022 draft. Do you think this is a good idea for the Heat, considering that's just a rental for Oladipo? They do hold his bird rights, so they can.
Oh, hell yeah! I mean, what did they give up? They gave up garbage to get him. What was the pick that they gave up for him? I mean, those two players, Olynyk, he's serviceable. Avery Bradley, I don't know if he's playing or not. but probably not seeing the floor too much. And then a pick swap. All for
The fact that they
Victor
were able to
Oladipo.
swap the picks is a pretty good deal, right?
And yeah, I think that the Heat, they've just, they've Victor Oladipo said he wants to go to the Heat anyway. So this is such a huge boon for the Heat in that they can just play him, and if he sucks, they can say, "Oh well, we didn't give up anything for you anyway, so you go do what you want. We're off Kelly Olynyk's contract and Avery Bradley's contract, and we weren't going to do anything like pick swap anyways." But what about the big move that the Miami Heat made, getting a former Timberwolves legend in
Right.
Nemanja Bjelica?
Bjelica
Bjelica's teaming up
reunites.
with his former teammate, Jimmy Butler. They had to give up Mo Harkless for that. Chris Silva. Mo Harkless is a guy we've been talking about for about 10 years, I think, that's supposed to do something. But
Right.
he's just involved in these trades. And what other great Timberwolves we saw? We saw our buddy Jeff Teague get waived he got traded to the Magic, waived, and picked up today by the Milwaukee Bucks. And he just keeps failing upwards.
That's a pretty good spot for him to land after a buyout, to be able to get land at the Bucks.
Yeah, and they had just recently, I believe, waived DJ Augustin.
Yeah.
So there's actually some place for him to dribble the ball like hell and hopefully come out with some air in that thing. And the other Timberwolves player I saw getting traded was James Johnson. He had a cup of coffee with the Wolves last year, of course, but he's basically the guy that is Rubio's contract now. He's facilitating a JJ Redick deal from Pelicans to the Mavs. So
it's a good spot. I'll point out one trade that I thought was interesting, and only because I read an article that said Gary Trent Jr. was traded to the Raptors after 42 games, the same amount of games his dad was traded from the Blazers to the Raptors. So is that a coincidence, or did they just say, hey, let's make this happen because this is super coincidental and would be hilarious?
Well, and that's crazy too, that there's a player old enough for the Raptors, who they came into the league in the 90s, and his son is being traded. If Gary Trent, I believe a Minnesota legend, he's got a Golden Gophers tattoo, I noticed.
Yeah.
Was he from Apple Valley or something?
Yeah, he grew up in Minnesota, probably did play for Apple Valley. I'm not quite sure where he went to high school, but I know Gary Trent Sr. has lived here. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting trade. And Gary Trent Jr. had been playing pretty darn good for the Blazers. Remember in the bubble playoffs last year, he played darn good.
Yeah, I mean, he showed that he can work in the playoffs, and he's a young player, and he was traded for a seasoned vet, Norman Powell. But is he really that much better than Gary Trent Jr.? I think it's one of those propositions for both those teams, or might as well give it a shot. Norman Powell, I think he's on his last year of his contract. Gary Trent's more of a long-term fixture, but Portland's trying to cash in this year, and the Raptors, after not trading Kyle Lowry, might have been a sneaky move for them to try and reinvigorate getting into the play-in, even though probably a wiser person would say that's probably too much work for him right now. But hey, you're still in it. You got all your good guys. Might as well see what you got.
Yeah. The only other trade that we could even mention would be the Bulls. They acquired Vujacic and Farouk Aminu.
Getting the international players with the fun names, but the one thing that I don't hear on the analysis of that trade is the Bulls are not in a great position in the standings right now, and of course it's good to add an all-star to your team, and I just don't know why they did it right now. Maybe the time was right for them to, and nobody thought that Vucevic was moving either. And
no, it came out of nowhere. the Bulls gave the Magic 2 future first-round picks, and
And
I
so,
don't
yeah, it should be
know
interesting.
if they're next year's first-round picks, but they gave up Wendell Carter Jr. a first-round pick, Otto Porter Jr., who they signed as a free agent, right?
They got him in the trade from Washington a while ago. I think he's going to be, he'll either be waived or, he's going to go he's going to be a free agent next season. He'll go someplace. That's the kind of guy that Timberwolves might, if they can get the right deal for him, think about, if you're the Timberwolves, you got to overpay maybe a little bit too. He's kind of in the mold of Wiggins, where he has been overpaid for so long that it's hard to look past that. And I think that if you do, you could see he's a good player in the mold of Jaden McDaniels, who could possibly teach him a thing or two in the swapping between the 3 and the 4 positions. And hopefully if the Timberwolves were to look at him for next year, that it would be a lower cap number than he's at this year.
Yeah. I was surprised by that trade. I guess the Bulls are thinking they can make a push for the playoffs. They certainly didn't trade their big asset. They didn't trade their biggest asset in Zach LaVine. So getting Vujacic is a pretty big deal, and maybe they're planning on a playoff push, right?
And that was probably the best return Orlando got on their fire sale. I mean, they're getting if the Bulls don't improve with Vucevic, then you're talking about possibly 2 lottery picks. So
Vucevic
and Wendell Carter. So yeah, Vucevic. Yeah, you got to read
Not
the
Vujacic.
accent.
I'll figure this out one day.
Hey, you got Bielitsa, so I think you'll get Vucevic
soon. Well, Kevin, this was great. Any other trades that you thought kind of were pretty crazy? I mean, PJ Tucker went to the Bucks pretty early, wasn't at the deadline.
Yeah, not too much other excitement out there. Fournier basically got moved for junk too.
Yeah.
The moves that the Celtics made, perhaps Tice is going to be a guy that the Timberwolves are going to be looking at the 4 for next year, who's going to be a free agent after this season, because he was basically shuffled off in a roster move, or in the Celtics did the thing that we had talked about the Timberwolves doing, and basically just trying to make sure they're staying out of repeater tax, because this is not their year, but you got to think that their year is coming. And that's what you got to play for, in my opinion. That in the NBA, you got to think, if it's not your year, you got to look at how next year is going to be your year. You don't really want to be thinking that much more in the future, but that's what the Celtics were thinking. And getting rid of
I think Gershon is definitely thinking a year or two ahead, not too much further past that. He shows that he wants to hold on to the talent he's acquired, which is why they didn't make the trade, I think. He likes the pieces he's put in place, and he wants to see what Chris Finch can do with it. And I am pleasantly surprised by what I've seen since the All-Star break and the coaching change. So, I hope they keep up with the hard work. We'll do another show here where we can discuss kind of the head coaching change and how that's affected the players. But I appreciate talking trades with you, Kevin, on Talkin Twolves, the double T for the double T from the double G.
Thank you, Garrett.
I love it, man. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we'll catch you next time. Good job, buddy.
You too, Garrett.